We are in 2 Kings.
Okay.
2 Kings 6:08. 2 Kings. We have, last week we looked at Hezekiah and Sennacherib. During the time of the siege on Jerusalem, when Hezekiah was king, if I got my dates right, he became sick. And the Lord, through Isaiah, tells Hezekiah, you're going to die, get your house in order, it's finished. And Hezekiah prays in chapter 20, and prays, Lord, give me more time, give me more time, give me more time. And sure enough, the Lord says, fine, you have 15 more years. During that last 15 years of chapter 20, Hezekiah grows proud. He grows proud of what he has and all the treasures that he has and how great his life is and kingdom is and the splendor and the gold and all of that. And we have visitors from Babylon that come and visit him. They sent this letter saying, oh, we heard you were sick. We would like to come visit you. Are you okay? And when they get there, he's better. The Lord has healed him. And so he starts showing all of the gold of the temple, all of the gold in the storehouses that he has, all the treasures. And he's showing all these things to foreign people. Now, it may come as a surprise to some of you, but that foreign people are going to be the people eventually that God is going to bring in to destroy Judah, Hezekiah's kingdom. And he's sitting there, here's the gold, and here's the silver, and oh, by the way, here's all of the artifacts, the very rare artifacts. Oh, and here's all the money that we have, and this is where we keep them, and there's the guards, and here's the plans to our security system. Basically, that's what he's getting at. Yeah, I know all the little guys are sitting there in the back of their head writing this down. Okay, we got this one over here, we got to go over this, etc. Well, Isaiah finds out about this. Isaiah discovers that these foreigners have come to the kingdom and that Hezekiah has shown them everything, has held nothing back. So I want to read a little bit about what happens. And we're going to go to verse 16 of chapter 20. And we'll pick up the story there. And we're going to read all the way through 21. Actually, first we're going to read through 18, and then we'll talk about that. So here Isaiah has come to see Hezekiah and, asks, I hear you had some visitors. And he goes, oh yeah. And what did you show them? Oh, everything. Not too bright. So in verse 16, he says, Then Isaiah said to Hezekiah, Hear the word of the Lord. The time will surely come when everything in your palace and all that your fathers have stored up until this day will be carried off to Babylon. Nothing will be left, says the Lord, and some of your descendants, your own flesh and blood, that will be born to you will be taken away, and they will become eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. What's a eunuch? Don't know. Eunuch is a male who has had his genitalia removed so that he no longer is able to have babies.
Well, more than that, so he doesn't have the, he usually weren't they in charge of the female ones, and they had to make sure that they weren't.
Sometimes they were in charge of the females and the harems and the princesses and the queens and things of that sort, yes. But this is one of the reasons why when we get to the book of Daniel, and Daniel is one of the princes, one of the noble people of Jerusalem when Nebuchadnezzar from Babylon comes in and takes it over. And he takes Daniel and his 3 companions and takes them away. That's why a lot of people believe that Daniel spent his life as a eunuch because of this particular prophecy. Wonderful. I would love to be a Daniel. How many people would love to be a Daniel? We think of Daniel, Daniel was so close to God. I want to be a Daniel. Really, would you like to go through what the Lord brought him through to be such a wonderful person? I don't think so. But anyway, this is Isaiah's prophecy. Hezekiah has done wrong. He's done bad. So, verse 19, this is Hezekiah's response. The word of the Lord you have spoken is good, Hezekiah replied. For he thought, will there be no peace and security in my lifetime? Stop right there. Why would Hezekiah say, that's a good idea? Your word is good.
It wouldn't be around to see it.
To him.
Yeah.
It's very strange. I don't understand why he would say that. I understand that there is...
I think he was selfish because it wasn't going to happen to him because he says, isn't everything going to be good while I'm still around? That's basically what he's saying.
It sounds like it, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like, okay, well, as long as I don't have to face it, I'm all right. Perhaps.
Maybe.
Don't know. I personally don't know. I don't have an answer for that.
I think it would be in his lifetime.
Maybe it wouldn't be in his lifetime. How about verse 20? We'll pick it up from there. As for the other events of Hezekiah's reign, all his achievements and how he made the pool and the tunnel by which he brought water into the city, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? Hezekiah rested with his fathers, and Manasseh his son succeeded him as king. End of Hezekiah's life. He's finished. He's done. Manasseh's now taking over. How do you think the last 15 years of his life went?
Who's?
Hezekiah's.
Okay.
Sounds like he was a selfish man. He didn't seem to care about his offspring. I
Well,
don't understand that.
I don't either. But interesting, isn't this the same king that went before the Lord when Sennacherib, the Assyrian king, was coming against him? Didn't he do well? Didn't he have a lot of reform and bring people back to God during the first part? Yeah. So what happened in the second part, this 15 years at the end? Doesn't sound to me like he walked in the same type of life that he walked in the first part. Do you think that had some effect?
Could he have gotten too big-headed with the first part of his reign? In other words, his ego took over and felt like, hey, look what I've done.
Sure, he could have gotten a big head. I think it shows he got a big head when he started walking everybody around, showing them all the riches of the place.
See, what I got out of that was he wasn't just saying, oh, look at this. He was saying, check out what I have. He was bragging at the...
That's what I mean. I think there was a puffed up pride. Perhaps that was after God had wiped out the 185,000 people, Assyrians, and now King Hezekiah is like, yeah, look what my God did. That's my God. I'm his king. See all this wonderful stuff? You can't touch this type of thing. I don't know exactly, but his last 15 years, something went wrong. And we don't know exactly what it was. However, Manasseh takes his place, his son. Verse 1. Somebody read verse 1 of chapter 21.
Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king, and he resigned in Jerusalem 55 years. Or resided? Yeah.
Reigned. Yes. Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 55 years. His mother's name was Hephzibah. Now, how old was Manasseh when he became king? 12 years old.
Older than Justin, but not by much.
You're 12?
No, Justin 12.
So that means at your age, you become king of an entire nation.
Oh my gosh.
Now, let me ask you a question. If Hezekiah was given 15 extra years, and during that last 15 extra years was his decline,
He wouldn't have been a good example to his son.
That's what I was going to say because of what it says. in the beginning of verse 2, if he was doing right, the beginning of verse 2 should not have happened, because it would have been a good.
Well, we'll read verse 2. What does verse 2 say?
He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, following the detestable practices of the nations the Lord had driven out before the Israelites.
Right. So we get to Manasseh. Manasseh's now 12 years old. That means 3 years after Hezekiah was cured and given another 15 years. 3 years later, Manasseh's born. Manasseh is raised in the last 12 years of Hezekiah's life, which are the years that we just read about when he's sitting there all puffed up and bragging about stuff. And Jennifer's point is that if Hezekiah had been the father that he should have been, and walking with the Lord as he should have been, then verse 2 of Manasseh's life would have read probably something other than he, Manasseh, did evil in the eyes of the Lord.
Was he not the worst one?
Well, let's find out, because we're going to read a little bit more.
The stuff I don't know where I read it, but talking about what kind of person he was. He was horrible.
Let's keep on going. We'll start in verse 2 and I'll keep on going. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, following the detestable practices of the nations the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. He rebuilt the high places his father Hezekiah had destroyed. He also erected altars to Baal and made an Asherah pole, as Ahab, king of Israel, had done. He bowed down to all the starry hosts and worshipped them. He built altars in the temple of the Lord, of which the Lord had said, in Jerusalem I will put my name. In both courts of the temple of the Lord, he built altars to all the starry hosts. He sacrificed his own son in the fire, practiced sorcery and divination, and consulted with mediums and spiritists. He did much evil in the eyes of the Lord, provoking him to anger. He took the carved Asherah pole he had made and put it in the temple, of which the Lord had said to David and to his son Solomon, in this temple and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, I will put my name forever. I will not again make the feet of the Israelites wander from the land I gave their forefathers, if only they will be careful to do everything I commanded them, and will keep the whole law that my servant Moses gave them. But the people did not listen. Manasseh led them astray, so that they did more evil than the nations the Lord had destroyed before the Israelites.
People are stupid, aren't they?
I think what stands out to me is that Hezekiah did not prepare his son to take over. He did not set it up. If I knew that my life was ending soon and this young man would take my place, I would make sure all the advisors I have in the palace were all like-minded, God-fearing, God-worshiping people who would advise my son correctly were I out of the picture.
Very good. If I was Hezekiah and I followed the Lord, I love the Lord, I was walking in his ways, and I had a son, and I knew my son would take the throne, you're right. I would do everything in my power to ensure that my son grew up and was ready and surrounded by people that loved the Lord. He would know the Lord.
Well, even just for our girls, we are trying to, not just to raise them, but to surround them with strong Christians and be in a healthy environment where we consider healthy is Christian.
Right. We're doing that with our daughters too. It's not just our sons, we're doing it with our daughters as well. Well,
That's what I'm trying to do with them, but
Your power.
so, So what do you think's going to happen? Do you think the Lord's just going to say, oh, that Manasseh, what a joker. Sticks a Baal altar right in the middle of my temple.
He sacrificed his own son in the fire to the idols.
And what is
He needs to die.
and what is this business about starry hosts? Do you know that part, back in verse 5, it had that starry host. He worshipped all the starry hosts.
Well, while I was reading it, he was devil worshiper.
Well, that's the sorcery, divination,
Astrology.
mediums,
Astrology.
spiritists, astrology. Yes, astrology. Guess who were the inventors of astrology?
Astronomy?
Babylonians. Babylonians. The Babylonians, Chaldeans, and all those folks, they were the ones that first began to notice the stars and the planets and the things of that sort. And they began to give signs and wonders and foretell the future and worship the sun, worship the moon, things of that sort. That was part of their culture. So Manasseh has now actually brought in not only the Canaanite gods, the Molech and the other ones that were from Canaan and from Phoenicia, but he's now gone to Babylon. He's pulled in the Babylonian gods too and all of their religious practices that they had. This guy is bad. This is Ahab, but worse. Remember Ahab? Okay, well, do you think Manasseh can get worse? Yes, he can. Let's keep going. Starting in verse 10. So, the Lord said through his servants the prophets, Manasseh king of Judah has committed these detestable sins. He has done more evil than the Amorites who preceded him, and has led Judah into sin with his idols. Therefore, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I am going to bring such disaster on Jerusalem and Judah that the ears of everyone who hears of it will tingle. I will stretch out over Jerusalem the measuring line used against Samaria, and the plumb line used against the house of Ahab. I will wipe out Jerusalem as one wipes a dish, wiping it and turning it upside down. I will forsake the remnant of my inheritance and hand them over to their enemies. They will be looted and plundered by all their foes, because they have done evil in my eyes and have provoked me to anger from the day their forefathers came out of Egypt until now. Moreover, let's stop right there. There's the pronouncement. So what is the Lord going to do?
Wipe him out.
Wipe him out. Go ahead.
Out of all those people,
Yes.
not any of them stayed with the Lord. Everybody followed him.
It just says the people of the Lord, all of Israel followed. Now, my guess is,
I'd hate to be lumped in with those guys if I was doing right.
yeah, you would, wouldn't you?
Yeah, because I'm going to get wiped out.
Perhaps. Remember, though, that God at times throughout history has secured or hidden some of his people. In the end time, when the armies come against Israel, there will be those people in Israel who love the Lord, and they are told, run, hide in the mountains, go hide in the caves, and God preserves them, even though the judgments are coming all over the place. It doesn't mean that they're going to have an easy life. It doesn't mean that they're going to come out unscathed. They're just going to be preserved. God's going to hold them and get them through. So, Daniel was a quote-unquote good guy. His 4 or 3 friends were good guys. Ezekiel was a good guy. Jeremiah was a good guy. Yet they went through the judgments.
Okay.
So God protected them, but didn't isolate them completely. They went through it.
Well, even as evil as Manasseh was, his son, who succeeded him even at an earlier age, was a good king.
No.
Josiah.
Josiah was not Manasseh's son. And we're going to find. I know. We'll get there. Don't jump ahead. Okay. So here's the question. Could Manasseh get worse? Answer, yes. Verse 16. Moreover, Manasseh also shed so much innocent blood that he filled Jerusalem from end to end, beside the sin that he had caused Judah to commit, so that he did evil in the eyes of the Lord. As for the other events in Manasseh's reign and all he did, including the sin he committed, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? Manasseh rested with his fathers and was buried in his palace garden, the garden of Uzzah, and Amon, his son, succeeded him as king. Hold it right there for just a minute. That don't zoom past that. He filled Jerusalem with the blood. What was that? Whose blood?
People that didn't believe like he
I'm
did.
assuming innocent.
Babies?
Perhaps babies, because he sacrificed babies, sons, daughters to the false gods. They would just, the image that I've read about is a giant bronze statue with arms held out like this. And the statue, or the grill on the hands, is red hot. And so they would do the ceremony, place the baby, place whatever on the grill of these hands, and then it would roll off into a pit of fire. And that was the way they gave homage to that particular god.
Well, he just, massive slaughters all it says.
Well, I'll tell you one that's not mentioned in here, huh?
Where are the mothers in all this?
Where are the mothers? The mothers are right there. They're behind it.
Well, maybe not all of them were, but there's not a lot they could do about it.
But if,
Right.
if you thought that
How
we
much
really
different
followed
is
God-
abortion than what we just read?
Yeah, but I'm sure some of those women.
But consider
all those
this.
women didn't have a
Consider this though, if you really thought this was your God and you were really behind him, you might consider it an honor to do this.
Yes, I mean, if you look at it, if you look at like extremist Islam, they are willing, and ladies, women also, are willing to blow themselves up for the cause, for Allah. So if they're willing to do it for that, then to offer up a child,
Piece of cake.
it's very similar. When
Well,
religion is very powerful for people. If people believe that that is the only way, that this really does work, they will do some rather strange things.
Well, that's why that dude had offered up his own son because he thought he was going to get, I don't know if he thought he was going to get a blessing or what, but he thought something good was going to happen to him for it.
Right. What were you going to say, Cheyenne?
I was just gonna say, even the people that you're talking about, like girls getting abortions and people blowing themselves up, there's always those people that don't want to do it, but are being forced to do it.
Yes, and I'm not saying that everybody willingly gave up their sons and daughters,
I would be like, put a bullet in my head before I go blow myself up. Like,
but that's okay. Go ahead. We just throw you in the fire too.
good. I would rather do that than have my baby.
And maybe
go alone.
people did, but he still It's horrible. It's horrendous. We look at the Bible and think the Bible is a bunch of nice little stories with that you know, and are really irrelevant. Do you know what? These stories are real. They happened in history. These are real historical things, and they are things that still happen today.
they still do that.
Yes.
Nebuchadnezzar wasn't all that
Yeah, my
great either.
English-
They used to, I don't know, I was reading, they skinned people.
I know my
It's
English teacher
gross.
was telling us, I don't even know, we're reading a book and then he like talks about the Bible in class sometimes and he was saying that there's this one story in it where these two ladies were fighting over this kid, saying that it was their son,
Mhm.
and so they went to the king and the king's like, okay, we'll cut him in half. One lady's like, okay, let's do it, and then the other one was like, no, let's not, and it proved that it was for
Yes,
kid.
that's Solomon.
I
That's
didn't-
solid.
he
That's
didn't
very
know
good.
what it was. He just-
Yes, that's very good. Yes, yes. Hopefully, true love would save the child. But that's neither here nor there. I'll give you another one. This is another one. Although it's not in the Bible that I could find anywhere, all traditional Jewish writing, ancient Jewish writing on this time and on Manasseh, says that Manasseh hated Isaiah. After Manasseh, you don't hear Isaiah's voice anymore. Tradition says that Manasseh imprisoned him, tortured him, and then sawed him in half.
Well,
This is like Saul.
I'm reading that Isaiah was sawed in two when trying to hide in a hollow log from Manasseh. But I don't know. Either way.
He did not like the prophets of the Lord. He did not like the doom and the judgment coming from the Lord. So instead of listening to it, he just killed him.
That wouldn't change it.
No, it doesn't change God's judgment, but it does mean Manasseh is one wicked, nasty man. So he dies. And his son Amon takes over in verse 19 of chapter 21. So Amon was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 2 years. His mother's name was Meshullemeth, daughter of Haruz. She was from Jotbah. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, as his father Manasseh had done. He walked in all the ways of his father. He worshipped the idols his father had worshipped and bowed down to them. He forsook the Lord, the God of his fathers, and did not walk in the way of the Lord. Ammon's officials conspired against him and assassinated the king in his palace. Then the people of the land killed all who had plotted against King Ammon, and they made Josiah, his son, king in his place. As for the other events of Ammon's reign and what he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? He was buried in his grave in the garden of Uzzah, and Josiah his son succeeded him as king. FYI, next verse, Josiah is 8 years old when he becomes king.
So he still has room to grow in the Bible.
Well, we're going to actually talk about Josiah next week, because we have something to deal with in these two kings, Manasseh and Amon. Manasseh and Amon. And I thought, I would get through all of Josiah and we'd be able to move on. However, there's a problem. 2 Kings is not the only story of Manasseh. And as I'm reading and doing my research and getting ready for today's lesson, I come across the story in 2 Chronicles. And I want to go there for a moment. So go over to 2 Chronicles.
And you said Chronicles basically is going back in time and starting over again with the kings and moving. It tells like a different.
It's an overlap. First Samuel or thereabouts through end of 2 Kings is about the same as First Chronicles through 2 Chronicles. They overlap. And I gave you that
Say that again.
picture.
First and Second Chronicles overlaps.
First and 2 Chronicles overlaps First Samuel through 2 Kings.
What chapter are we in?
We will be in chapter 33. So 2 Chronicles chapter 33. And this one's, I think, is where it showed me two things. The first one I'll share right away, and that is, be sure that when you read a story, you get a story, that you try to get all that the Bible says about it. That's why you need to know the Bible. That's why you need to be able to rightly divide it. You need to know it and become familiar with it. Because I would have not known this. I would have not gotten any lesson out of it other than Manasseh was one wicked dude and produced Amon, who was also a bad king. But I want to show you something. Go to verse 10. And we're going to read verse 10 through 13 first. The Lord spoke to Manasseh and his people, but they paid no attention. So the Lord brought against them the army commanders of the king of Assyria, who took Manasseh prisoner, put a hook in his nose, bound him with bronze shackles, and took him to Babylon. In his distress, he sought the favor of the Lord his God and humbled himself greatly before the God of his fathers. And when he prayed to him, the Lord was moved by his entreaty and listened to his plea. So he brought him back to Jerusalem and to his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew the Lord is God.
Wow.
What happened there?
Apparently he just.
What happened? What does that say happened? Literally tell me what the story is.
Basically, God rescued him, and he went back and just.
He repented. There was repentance.
Yes. The Lord brought judgment on Manasseh. said, all right, Manasseh, you are so wicked, you are so bad, I'm going to take you, I'm going to bring a foreign king down, the king of Assyria. I'm going to have him come down. He's going to stick a hook in your nose like an ox, like a cow, a bull, and he is going to drag you in shackles to prison. And out of that punishment, out of that discipline, Manasseh cries out to God.
Wait, so you like put it through like a septum piercing?
Well, it's a figure of speech, is to hook the nose. You know, the bull has a ring in his nose, right? You could grab that ring on the bull's nose, and you can lead that bull wherever you want to go.
It's painful.
Yes. So the thought process is you could take a hook and you could hook the inside nostril of a bull's nose, and you could lead the bull wherever you want it to go. Or you could hook the ring and pull wherever you want it to go. So that is the imagery that God is saying his judgment on Manasseh. Manasseh, you are so bad. I am going to bring a king down. He's going to take you, drag you away in shackles, and out of prison, Manasseh calls on the Lord. And the Lord hears him and then restores him.
Question.
Well, it didn't say that over in
Why didn't he call on all those other gods that he was bowing to, unless he knew in his heart there was one true God to answer to?
It's a good question. I don't know why he didn't call on the other gods unless he knew that the real God was the real God. This is what I think is true. I believe the Bible teaches this truth. Everybody knows the real God. Every single person who has ever been born at any time, in any culture, in any part of the world, knows God. By creation. There's a general revelation. First chapter of Romans says those things that can be known of God, his power, his divine majesty, the glory, all of that is enough to condemn everybody who decides, I'm not going to listen to that God. It's enough. It's just enough. So I don't think that anybody goes up against God or follows another religion believing or just completely, totally out of ignorance. They think this is it. This is all there is. There is something within them that knows that there is a God. This God is a God who has created all of the heavens. And if you've ever been in the middle of the night with no lights on, you've seen the heavens and the majesty that you see in the heavens. How can you not believe that there is a God who put that in order? Mm-hmm. All of creation, the heavens and the earth declare your glory. All of it, continuously. We're teaching our kids the 19th Psalm, or part of it. And here's how it starts. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they display knowledge. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard. The voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. All people from all time, all languages, all countries have heard those words. If they're able to breathe and live and see and wonder, they see the skies, they see the heavens, those words are proclaimed forever. They proclaim the glory of God. Therefore, everyone is guilty. You have to suppress truth to follow a false god. So, here's Manasseh, back in 2 Chronicles chapter 33. And he cries out to God, and God restores him. So what does Manasseh do? He goes back. He's been given back his kingdom. Verse 14. Afterward, he rebuilt the outer wall of the city of David west of the Gihon spring in the valley, as far as the entrance of the fish gate, and encircled the hill of Ophel. He also made it much higher. He stationed military commanders in all the fortified cities of Judah. He got rid of the foreign gods and replaced the image from the temple of the Lord, as well as all the altars he had built on the temple hill and in Jerusalem. And he threw them out of the city. Then he restored the altar of the Lord and sacrificed fellowship offerings and thank thank offerings on it, and told Judah to serve the Lord, the God of Israel. The people, however, continue to sacrifice at the high places, but only to the Lord their God. And then it goes to the other events that you'd see. His prayers and stuff like that are recorded in the annals. So, this is all I want to do for today. I want to look at what happened. Manasseh, for the majority of his life, as we understand it, lived a wicked, evil life. Killing the prophets, slaughtering his son, burning his son as sacrifice, practicing witchcraft, practicing astrology and fortune telling, and talking to demons and spirits and things of that sort. And yet, we find out that when God disciplines him, he repents. And he turns around. He comes back and he makes reforms. He tears down the idols. He tears down the Asherah pole. He does these things to cause reform, to bring people back to the Lord.
How come he didn't teach his kid?
Okay, good question. How come he didn't teach his kid? He did.
Sin has
It's too late.
consequence.
He did teach his kid.
Oh, he was 22.
He did teach his kid. And I want to explain this to you, because this is the heart of today's lesson. Okay? We believe, or we have a tendency to believe, that our sin is ours. Whatever God does with our sin, that's a personal thing. It's mine. You know what? I'll do what I want, and I'll take the consequences for it, etc., etc. Did Manasseh's sin stay isolated only to Manasseh?
No. Probably into the third and fourth generation or something. I don't know.
And people still follow.
They still followed. Because of his sin, because of his example, because of his life, an entire nation was led into sin. The whole nation was led into sin. His son, Amon, grows up, and how is he? Is he any better? No. Why? Because he was taught something else. We get into this mind frame that our lives are mine. And how I choose to live it is mine. It is not my child's. It is not my family's. It's not my community. It's not my nation. It's not my church family. But what we see with Manasseh is, sorry there, Manasseh, it's not yours. We pay. Think about it this way. What would happen if my daughters saw me on a regular basis beat my wife? For 15 years, 20 years, they grow up. They're in their high school age now. And they grew up with a father who regularly would abuse verbally or physically their mother.
They would feel it's okay.
They
for
wouldn't think
their
much of your
teacher.
God.
They definitely would not think much of my God. My God, my guess is that they would say I had a different God, not the God that Mama talks about.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
They would feel as if it was okay for their future spouse to do what their father was doing to their mother.
They would say it's okay.
The norm.
What if I had a son? What if I didn't have a daughter, I had a son?
He would do the same thing to his wife.
You think he would do the same thing to his wife?
Yeah.
Why?
Maybe.
Because
Yeah,
that was
grew up
what his
watching
example was.
what his father did.
Because what? I had a maybe, and then I had what?
That was what his example was.
That was what he was, that's his example. That was what he was taught. I will teach. Think about Manasseh. Think about Amon growing up, knowing that he could have been one of the sons that was sacrificed in the fire. How'd you like that one on your head? Oh yeah, my dad's a king. I'm one of his
Maybe
sons.
When he came back, realized his own son was too far gone, so he concentrated on Josiah, and maybe that's why he turned out good.
You don't know. That's the whole point. Is that I have not gone through and looked at all the chronology.
You also cannot assume if a father teaches his children or a mother teaches her children God's ways that they will follow in God's ways,
right.
because children are very rebellious and willful, and their natural instinct is, I want to do what I want to do, and not what God
Yes.
or somebody
There is-
else tells me.
Right. Your faithfulness to the Lord, your faithfulness to teach that faithfulness to your children does not guarantee that they will love the Lord when they grow up. That is a truth. However, that is what you're commanded to do anyway, regardless of whether you are, regardless of the result. You're not given, well, if you know that your kid is a rebellious kid, then you don't have to do these things. If you know your kids are rebellious kids, you don't got to spank the kid when they're done wrong. You don't have to punish them. You don't have to instruct them. You don't have to live your life right.
Don't take him to church.
Don't take them to church. Don't read the Bible to them. You don't have to do those things. That's not in the Bible. What's in the Bible is, in every breathing moment of your life, put the word and truth into your child's life and live it. Be the example for it.
Amen.
That has to be there. Yes.
What's rebellious mean?
Rebellious? Rebellious means that, I'll give you an example. What was that?
Unwilling to do.
Not so much unwilling to do, it's a willful
On purpose.
desire to do opposite what you know to be true, to do. So for instance, I'll give you an example. If your mom were to tell you, go empty the dishwasher, and you looked back at your mom and went,
Does that now?
and decide to not do it, that is a willful act. I have decided I get to tell me what I get to do. Therefore, I will not go and listen. I will not obey my mother. I will not honor her what she tells me to do. That would be rebellion. But it doesn't have to be so in your face.
It's also rebellion against God. Because
Yes.
God said to honor your mother and your father.
Right. So because it is, and that's part of this picture of family, this picture of God and what God created in family. And when we get to Manasseh has spent his whole life teaching the wrong picture, teaching the wrong doctrines, the wrong instructions. It's been bad instruction. What do you expect from Amon to do anything other than what his father did? He walked in the ways of his father.
I don't know. If I was that kid's mom, like you were saying, if you were beating on your wife,
Mm-hmm.
and I was that wife,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a son or a daughter, I would be telling that kid constantly, this is not okay.
Yes, the mother would say, if I was beating on my wife would be
I would
telling.
be going behind my husband's back, telling my kids that is not okay. You don't ever let someone treat you like that. You don't ever treat someone like that.
Okay.
But it's still,
All right. What do you say?
but it's still,
It still has an effect.
yeah.
Yeah, but what if he beat
It's
you
just
for
like-
saying that?
Let's I'll tell you what. Roll it back. Let's make it a little bit different.
I'm so glad my dad would kill someone.
Let's roll it back a little bit. My wife loves the Lord. My wife loves the Lord. I, on the other hand, am more of a new age, just love the world, everything. You know, I want to
Incorporate all religion.
that coexist garbage and lie and blaspheme.
Oh my gosh, all over people's bumpers.
And so what I say is that if you want to do whatever you want to do, I am so behind it. I am there for you. You want to, let's go. We can go to a pot party It'll be okay. Let's just go. I know some friends. Let's go. We can drink. Let's drink. Sure. I know you all are giggling, but you haven't been to one, have you?
What? A kickback?
A pop party?
Yes.
They're not called.
They're not called those,
It's
but
called a kickback.
well, today they may be called kickbacks. But what about let's go to a kegger.
A what?
Kegger.
Bonfire.
Hooray.
Whatever you want to call it, where I'm totally cool with it. My wife, on the other hand, is trying to instill a biblical worldview, a biblical way of loving the Lord and following the Lord. Now what do?
Go without her?
Which one are you going to follow? The goody or the one that's fun?
Fun.
Yeah, let's party.
Party hard.
Okay,
Tomorrow
so
Friday.
what is the difference then between my example saying, you know what, whatever you want to do is cool with me,
Live and let live.
live, let live, as long as it's consensual, it's all good. As long as both of you agree, I don't care, it's all good. What I'm telling you is that there needs to be some framework, some structure. We need to get an understanding of what needs to be in the family. What needs to be in the family so that we don't end up being like a Manasseh.
How do you protect your family today?
How do you do
He's
that?
Ready to find a husband and get married. I mean, not about to, but that's the big thing. I mean, what is she going to do to protect her family in this generation?
Well, what is she going to do? Yes. You look at you have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 people here that someday within the next 5, 10 years, maybe, it's around there.
Justin already acts like he's king.
Well, you're going to find a partner, more than likely, and you're going to probably get married. And you're going to build a family. And in that family, you're going to build structure. There are going to be certain things that you say, this is the way our family is raised. These are the things that we feel are important. Now, one of my favorite preachers right now on this subject is a preacher by the name of Vodi Bakum. Yeah. He gives 6 things that he suggests, and he pulls them out of Deuteronomy chapter 6. Since we started this time of the kings in Exodus, in that time of the law, I would like to go back there. I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but I'd like to give you these things that he said, and I would like to close at that point just by asking you, how can we put those into our lives now, really? So let's go back to Deuteronomy chapter 6. Deuteronomy chapter 6 on page 284. And this is...
On my book, it's 262.
Oh, I'm so sorry. But you're in a different Bible. Yes, it's in the black Bible on 284. Okay. The first one that he suggests for a family. You want a family that's structured right, that has better odds in these times. Just say that. Deuteronomy chapter 6. The first one is... a God without rivals. And that comes from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. Who can hit that one? Who can read that one?
Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love your
That's it, right there. That's 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. What was the first commandment?
Thou shalt have another God before me.
Yes, you shall have no other gods before me. We live in a world where God has to compete for Christians attention and time and devotion and worship all the time. We build households around things that take precedent over God, over the things of God, over His Word. And Vodie's comment on this one is that we do things that say this is more important than God. And we end up making Him, or whatever that is, God. It might be academics. My child's academics are more important. It might be the television. It might be alcohol. It might be drugs, something that bad.
A job.
It might be a job. That's another one. How many fathers are so spent on their career that they have no time for their kids? So that's the first one. The next one is in verse 5. Who can read verse 5?
Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength.
Okay. What he calls that? Learn to love in the home. And he initially started with this as it's the vertical part. This is love the Lord your God with all your mind, heart, and soul. That's the one that Jesus mentioned, remember? What is the greatest law of all laws? He says, love the Lord your God with all your mind, heart, and soul. That's this way. Love God. But Jesus didn't stop there. Jesus said, and this one is like the first. What's the second one?
Love your neighbor as yourself.
Love your neighbor as yourself. What is the most perfect, the most precious picture of God's love on earth?
Sacrifice of His Son.
True. What's the second one? Family. The family is the most intimate picture of God's love. We have the picture of Christ loving the church, dying for the church, dying for His bride, the one He loves with all of His heart, and she responding back in submission, loving Him. And we have that picture in a father or in a husband and a wife. We have the picture of God Father, and we as children, His children. We have that picture between the father, mother, and the children. That's why Mom was making the comment, honor your mother and your father. If you don't honor your mother and your father, you rebel against your mother and your father, you're really rebelling against God. Because that mother-father picture with the child is a reflection of our childlike relationship with the Lord. So putting love in your home where God's love is central, that sacrificing love in your home, not only is through to God, but is to one another. I have to love you. It's part of my duty. It's part of what I'm supposed to do. I have to love you. And then we're called the family of God. That's church. There's another way of loving your neighbor as you love yourself, as an expression of your love for God. So he says, put love in the middle. Find ways to do that. Love is not random. Love is work. It's deliberate. It's self-sacrificing. Next one, verse 6. Who can read verse 6?
These commands that I give you today are to be upon your hearts.
Very good. These commands I give you today are to be upon your hearts. So number 3, how does he word this? He says, give God your heart. And I don't know if I give God your heart. What do you think he means by that? What do you think it means here when it says, these commands that I give you today are to be upon your heart? What does that mean? That little thing that goes pum 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 pum. We're supposed to like tattoo them there or something.
Meditate on it night and day. Always have it in your.
Meditate it on night and day. Keep it fresh in your mind. Yeah, really. Remember the Hebrew heart is not the muscle. It's the center of who you are. It is
the center of your life.
Yes,
Your heart.
center of your life.
Is the heart.
But it's mental. It incorporates your mind too. It's not some ethereal thing out here that you know, hopefully you can grab it. No. David says, like you were saying, meditate on your word night and day. If you go back to Psalm 19 again, there are so many. The law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The statutes of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise the simple. On and on and on and on. These things, put them on your heart. Put them on your heart. Put them on your heart. That should be in your home. Next one, verse 7. This is a big one. Who can read verse 7?
I don't know what happened the last one.
You got it? You're going to have to read loud.
Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you grow up.
There you go. Number 4, teach God's word. And you know, if you would add it, to your children. I would add, if you're a husband, or if you're looking for a husband, or you plan to have a husband someday, make sure your husband can do that for you. Yes, it's not just about you teaching your kids. Make sure you can teach your wife someday and your children someday what the Word says. To love the Lord, to follow the Lord. What is right, what is wrong. Where does God draw lines? Teach God's Word. Is this what you do? You send your kids off to school, and the school will teach you or teach your kids. Is that right? You've learned a lot about God in your school, haven't you?
It's illegal to teach about religion.
It's illegal to teach religion. Actually, it's not illegal to teach religion. It's illegal to talk about the Christian God.
That's right. You can talk about any religion. Jacob had to go through a thing where he learned about all kinds of religions and all kinds of God, because that's cool. It's just our God that it's illegal.
Right. And even the Christian God can be brought up in some regards, as long as the child is the one that initiates the conversation. However, everything in our schools today crushes or considers Christian biblical worldview to be foolish and really ignorant.
We can't talk about politics either.
Well,
You can, they just opt not to. Like some teachers won't tell you what their political stance is.
Right. But the idea being is that you want a home where your kids, think of Amon. What would have happened if Manasseh in his whole life had raised his son, teaching him about God, teaching him the stories of the old kings, and what has happened? Yes, sir.
He would have done right in the eyes of God.
He would have done right in the eyes of God?
Necessarily. There was a lot of kings, David being one of them. Just like everybody was saying earlier, just because you show a good example does not necessarily mean your children will follow in that way. And a lot of the kings of the Bible did not.
You're right. A lot of kings did not follow after
chance.
Here's the point. You're talking about chance of what might happen. What would be the outcome? What would be the outcome if you taught your child wrong?
Wrong. Most likely.
They will follow in your footsteps. It's not an option. You have to teach your kids. You have to teach your kids. And since you, Peter and Justin and I are the only guys in this room, it's our job. It is not someone else's. It's not these ladies' jobs. It's our jobs. And guess who's going to be held accountable someday for that job being done or not done?
You.
Yes. Yes.
The men.
Well, what about the mothers who have no husband, that have no man in the house? Are they off the hook now? No. They
They marry a
Don't get a
They need a man
babysitter
up.
named April.
they need to man up.
I'm sure they have like a grandfather or an uncle. Or something.
What did you just say? What was that?
I'm sure there's a grandfather or an uncle. Or something.
Grandfather and uncle. What do we call that?
Family.
Family.
What if there isn't?
Then you are in a church and you have a bunch of uncles and a bunch of grandpas. What if you don't have one of those?
Uncle Peter.
Yes.
Grandpa teacher.
Grandpa Peter, yes. There's your family unit. You need help? Go to the church. Get into the family of God. Find the people in the family of God to help you and lift you up. Now, mind you, there are some people I know that the church has failed. There was no one that manned up. Maybe because they didn't have any idea that that was their job. I don't know. But we are told, teach our children. In the home, when you walk around, when you lie down, when you get up in the morning, teach them. Next one. Verse 8.
I'll read it.
Okay.
Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your forehead.
Very good. What does that mean?
Keep them close.
Basically, I think it would be the same thing.
Yes.
Yes.
It's just a continuation of what. Not only do you teach it, you live it. Yes. Live out God's word. You did. You did very good. I teach you, but these things have to be on my forehead and my hands. They have to be personal to me. I have to live them out. I have to remember, that thing on my hand, that thing on my forehead. Yeah, it reminds me I'm supposed to be living a certain way. I'm supposed to be...
An outward sign, basically.
Yes, live right. And then the last one that he mentions in verse 8, it says, verse 9, write them on your door frames of your houses and on your gates. And he says, this is the sixth one, mark your house as God's. And that's a figurative idea. When people come to your house, how you do these up here marks your house as a house where God has predominance. He is central. He is number one. We submit to his way of doing things in my house. Or I try. That's what we're supposed to be doing. So, but that goes back to the ones before. When you go home, here's your lesson for the day. When you go home, are you living more a life that exemplifies Manasseh's way of teaching? Or are you living more the way of life that Moses describes in Deuteronomy is the way we're supposed to live? Our houses should be like this. Our families should be like this. When you go home, are you as a child fulfilling your part of that picture? Or are you rebelling against your parents and rebelling therefore against God? Mind you, King Manasseh rebelled too. I don't know about you, but I don't have any desire to have God come along and stick a hook in my nose and drag me away. It might be a hard lesson to learn. Even so. Even so. How should we live? What legacy, what are we leaving for the next generation? What are we doing in our lives that is going to affect you? What is going to affect me? Are you living in a way that is going to affect my life, my family, my world? Am I living right?
I've found in my old age, I wonder how much of the way I lived has made it a more difficult world for my grandchildren to honor God. The way I lived, not just my children, but my grandchildren, what do they have to live with?
Mm-hmm. It's yes. And I'll tell you what, when I got to this part of Manasseh, I was, like I said, initially I was just going to skim right through because all I was reading was 2 Kings. But when I got to this second part, I realized, do you know what? There is grace. There is grace for evil if evil will repent. Manasseh.
People would have a hard time with that, though.
But it's there. It's there. You are not so bad, so broken, so lost, so evil, so messed up that God's grace is not enough. God will never look at you and go, oh, if I had only been able to do more, I might have been able to love you. No. The sacrifice, the penalty that was paid, the ransom that was paid was enough. It was sufficient. Jesus is sufficient. God's grace is sufficient. Even for the Manassehs. Even for the Matthew Wilsons. And just because you are at the end doesn't mean you can't cry out to the Lord. Cry out. Call out. Say, Lord, I've messed up. I don't know how to get back. I'm in prison here. My sin has brought me to a place where I'm imprisoned. But I want to be in love with you. I want to be with you. And see if he does not respond by hearing your plea and bringing you back, restoring what may have been lost. But here's the kicker. Even though Manasseh was restored, Judah and Manasseh's son were not. If you keep reading, we'll get this next week. If you keep reading, the word gets to Josiah that God will bring judgment to Judah because of Manasseh's sin. It will point back to Manasseh's earlier life. The consequences of his early life were not erased. His sin was erased. The Lord was gracious to him, but the consequences of what he did continued, and people paid the price. We need to be careful that what we do and how we live don't cause others to pay the price, despite God's grace. Next week we'll look at Josiah, and then we'll be finished with this portion of our lesson on the kings. Let's pray.